In this video, we'll cover the include and exclude level of detail expressions, when to use them, how to create them, and some of the overall best practices for using them. So by the end of this video, you should be able to confidently know how and when to use each one to improve your visualizations or data analysis. So here we have an inverse pyramid representing the order of operations, so when calculations are executed in Tableau. And you can see that the include and exclude LOD executes after the dimension filter, so they will change depending on how you filter in your view. What this means is when your view changes, the result of these expressions would change as well. And the easiest way to know which LOD to use for any given view is to figure out if you want to drill down to more detail or to broaden your view, so include less detail. If you want to drill down to more detail, you would want to add a field so that your calculations would have more context, which would be an include LOD. If you want to broaden your view, so remove some detail from your view, you would want to remove a field, so that would be an exclude LOD. And to create any kind of LOD, you would have it in a calculated field where the expression is surrounded by curly brackets. In this video, we'll go through the exclude and include one, but there's also fixed LOD, which was shown in my last video. And if you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend it because fixed level of detail expressions are also very useful. So after the function, you would have the fields to either exclude or include from the view. So here for this one, I'm excluding the product name from the view, and then a colon and the aggregation that you want to do. So here it's the sum of sales. So what this expression is doing is it's excluding product name from the view and then summing the sales. And then here it's including the province and then summing the sales. So the aggregation level is determined by what you have on the view, plus the views that you include or exclude in these calculated fields. Let's first dive into exclude level of detail expressions. So exclude LODs remove some detail from your view and allows you to do aggregations at higher levels. By higher level, I mean a more broad aggregation. So a very simple example is if you have sales data displayed by country, region, and product name, this will still show the total sales for each product where the country is at the highest level and the product name is at the lowest level, but you want to have the total sums at the region level. So what you can do here is add an exclude level of detail calculation, which is exactly what this column is doing, where it aggregates at the region level. So if we look at this next tab here as support, we can see that total sales for the central and west region levels are exactly the same as the aggregated LOD over here, where it's 1,900 and 14,000 approximately. So let's take a look at the calculated field, and we can see we have the standard LOD calculation where it's surrounded by curly brackets and then the function and then the field that you want to aggregate on. So here we want to exclude the product name and move up a level and do the sums of sales at that level. We can also see how the exclude LOD changes if we add a dimension between region and product name, so say province. And now the exclude LOD sums roll up the sums for every product into the province level because that's the level after the product name. So let's keep in mind these values. So for Manitoba, it's approximately 1,900, and for Alberta, it's approximately 11,500. So when we change the order of these, so if we move province before region, we can see that there's no change to the LOD sum because from a data structure standpoint, the level of detail for region is still higher than the level of detail for the province. Next, we can also look at what happens if we exclude a field that isn't at the lowest level. So let's just move this back for clarity. So say instead of excluding product name, let's try to exclude province and see what happens. So when we apply this, we can see that the exclude LOD sums are now at the product level because we can't skip levels for exclude. And since the product name is the lowest level in the view, that's what the exclude LOD sums will be at. So now let's take a look at the other level of detailed expression, which is include. Include LODs allow you to add fields to the view to enhance calculations and have aggregates at the level you want it to be at. So the example we'll go through today is looking at averages at different levels. And the level of detail currently in this view is at the country region level with a country filter for only Canadian records, so we can work with a smaller subsample of the data. When we use the standard average of sales, so going into the field and then clicking measure and average, we get the total sales divided by the count of different items in each order. And this aggregation is done at the order ID level, where it's the total sales in the order divided by the number of different products in that order. We can do a quick sanity check by looking at the include support sheet, where I filtered out to the central region and province of Manitoba with the order IDs and sales. So the total sales here is approximately 1,930, and the total count of the items is 4 plus 2 plus 4 plus 2 is 12, so it would be averaging on 12 items. And when we go back to the include LOD worksheet, I've displayed it in the view here, and 1930.78 divided by 12 is approximately 161. Now, if we want to have the averages at the province level, we can, and we don't even have to have the field in the view. And this is what this column is showing, so it's averaging at the province level. And we can look at how this calculation is made. So here it follows the same standard LOD expression layout, being wrapped around curly brackets, and then having the function followed by the field and a colon, and then the aggregation. Here the field is province and the aggregation is the sum of sales. And we can verify it's actually averaging at the province level by looking at the drill down of averages in the include support 2 sheet. And we can see for the central region, it's only 1,930. So the average is going to be the same because there's only one province in the central region. But if we look at the values in the west region and then add it up, it adds up to approximately 14,355, and dividing that by 3, which equates to approximately 4,785, which is what we have here. So we can average at whatever level we would like. And if I change the LOD to include customer name instead, so here instead of province, we have customer name, we can see that these change. And when we look at the next sheet and include customer name in here, we can see that there's two customers in the central region. So it would be the sum of all the sales in this region divided by 2 because there's two customers. And when we take this sum, which is 1,930 divided by 2, we get approximately $965, which is what we have here. So being able to get the averages at any level is great for comparing it to the total sales. Now, if we look at the bar chart visualization that I've created for the total sales versus the average customer sale per region, we can see that for the West region here, the average is very high with the highest total sales. So there's a small number of consumers making big purchases, while contrasting that to the East region, we can see that it's relatively low and having a high total sales. So there are more customers making smaller purchases in this region. And to conclude this section for the include LODs, they're mainly used when you want to include fields that aren't present in the view, and they're great for aggregating at specific levels. Last but not least, we'll go through some best practices. So some best practices for using include and exclude LODs is to do sanity checks with your data you're working with to make sure that, say, the averages in include LODs are averaging at the right level, or the total sums in Exclude LODs are summing at the right level. You can do these checks by displaying the averages or sums at specific levels in your view and verifying on that smaller subset of data, like I did in my examples where I displayed the specific level in my view I wanted to average at and do the divisions manually to see if the averages make sense. Since these LODs can sometimes get really complicated, it's also best practice to only use them when necessary and to make sure that they're not overused. Also, documentation is very important when working with these LODs because going back to them 6 months later without any documentation can make the calculations harder to understand, and it will also help other people understand what you're trying to do when they work on your notebooks. I didn't include any documentations here, so let's go back to include them. So in the exclude, this was for excluding provinces, but to begin with, I think we were excluding product names and having that sum at the province level. So when we do that, this is to exclude product names in the view to aggregate at the province level. Okay, and then for the include, it was to aggregate at the customer name level to average the sum of sales. That concludes this video. I hope this video was useful for you. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would like to be updated every time I post a new video, I would love for you to subscribe to me. I always post a new video every Thursday.